We've all had bad dates, right? This is the only date I've had to date that rang every alarm bell and waved every red flag. I'll preface this by saying I don't go on many dates, but when I do, I make sure I follow safety protocol by only meeting my date in public places, let either family or friends know where I'm going, and park in a populated place close by to wherever we meet. Anyway, this date initially suggested we meet at his house to watch a movie and have a few drinks, and I said no, I don't feel comfortable with that and I only want to meet in public. He seemed okay with this, but then brought it up a few more times and I said, if money is an issue, we could meet up another time or forget about it altogether. But my date backtracked and went with my idea of meeting at a cafe I chose, that I was familiar with and equidistant to where we both lived. Anyway, he turns up in a 2-door car, this detail is relevant, and goes into the cafe and I follow behind and introduce myself. After a polite introduction, things begin to get weird. I order a Coke and he says, "Don't you want a drink?" I was going to pop into bar, which is connected to the cafe, and get one. I say no, I'm not drinking, and he looks at me as if I'm being unreasonable. I already explained in messages I don't drink as I'm on medication, so having to explain it again pissed me off. He seems disappointed and goes to order a cider from the bar while I get a table. Anyway, we sit down with our drinks, and date immediately goes on about going back to his place again, even though the original plan was to stay here and order food, and I already stated that was not happening. He says something along the lines of having a few drinks and eating at his place, and I said we don't have to eat, we can just have our drinks and leave. He gets defensive and says he has money but prefers it if we go back to his place. I make a joke and say, "You're not a killer, are you?" And instead of laughing it off, he stares at me uncannily and says, "You don't think I would hurt you, do you?" I laugh uncomfortably and say, "Of course not, but really, I'm relieved this date won't be going any further." Date suddenly says, "Are you going to follow me in your car because that wouldn't make sense? How about we go in my car, but I've got packages in the front, so you'll have to squeeze in the back and I'll drop you back off to your car after." In reality, that made less sense than me following him in my own car and then driving home from this house after. The fact it was completely illogical made it even more creepy in my mind. Every alarm bell was going off at this point. I said, "Look, I don't want to go to yours, and your insistence is giving me the creeps." Date looks shocked, mumbles something about needing the toilet and excuses himself from the table. A few moments later, I see him through the cafe window getting into his car and driving off. Massive bullet dodged, in my opinion. Also, the fact his car didn't have back doors made it even more sinister, because imagine if something happened in the car and I couldn't escape. That creepy date kept wanting me to go back to his house, and when I kept saying no, he finally noped out like the creep he is. I reported him on the dating app.
Some of you might be familiar with Salem, Massachusetts, and its infamous reputation. It is also known for having various haunted locations. One of them is the Hawthorne Hotel, which is also considered one of the most haunted hotels in the United States. This story is an experience that a friend of mine had years ago when she, her sister, and several friends decided to spend a few nights there. I will call her Gigi. Gigi had always considered herself a skeptic and also agnostic. She went into this convinced that it would be nothing more than a fun night in a historical hotel. After the group, who took up a few rooms side by side, finished unpacking, had dinner, spent time in town, they returned to settle in for the night. But of course they had no intention of going to sleep just yet. One of them brought an Ouija board and thought it might be fun to attempt contact with any of the spirits that dwell within. Before they started, they light a bunch of candles for aesthetic purposes. Gigi felt this was goofy and silly, but in the spirit of entertainment, obliged and joined in. The session started out very slow, the planchette not even moving at all, no matter how much the group asked for spiritual response. Then, as they were considering giving up, Gigi's sister asked one more time, in a frustrated voice, if there was anyone near them in the room. All of a sudden, they felt a wind gust, and all the candles went out. They did not have any windows open, and it wasn't a drafty room. This startled them so much, they all jumped away from the planchette and board, and decided that was the end of it. But according to Gigi, this wasn't the end of it. This was when, and I quote her, all hell broke loose. Shortly after this, then the group was trying to get their bearings straight. They started hearing knocking noises and fleeting whispers that sounded male right in the room with them. The noises and whispers did not stop, even with every light in the room now turned on. The doors also started opening, then closing. The girls were all really spooked, but eventually and reluctantly returned to their rooms. Unfortunately for Gigi, it was her room that this happened in. Gigi was later trying to get some sleep when she started hearing footsteps as if they were pacing around her bed. She bolted straight up, started feeling her heart pounding and her anxiety skyrocketing. She put the light next to her bed on, but saw nothing. Weirdly enough, she was still hearing footsteps ever so soft around her bed. She also started hearing more whispering. She also said it felt like someone was touching her hair and leaning on the bed. At this point, she decided she didn't want to stay in the room anymore and planned to ask her sister if she could join in her room. Before she planned to depart, she went into the bathroom. She had left the lights in the room on. As she was using the bathroom, she noticed underneath the bathroom door that the comforting glow of the lights suddenly went out. The door to the bathroom opened up. Meanwhile, Gigi is in panic mode, then sees that a glow is coming in from the window there. As she stands up, she suddenly notices this dark figure that was black, then the blackest part of the room jet straight across. This proved too much for her. She then made a run for her out of her room and into the hallway. She called her mother and was in tears at this point, begging her mother to drive out and get her. Her sister had driven them in, and she didn't want to go disturb her, although she eventually did. She ultimately wound up staying in her sister's hotel room, did not get a wink of sleep, and waited until her mom picked her up the next morning, ending her own trip early. She told me that this ordeal eroded her skepticism about the paranormal.
I was in Jim Jones's church in the 1960s before Jonestown. I got a hands-on healing from Jim that saved my life. Now I'm 71, and a hospice RN still helping people die peacefully. I think I'm compensating for the murders in Jonestown that Jim was responsible for. This has been on my mind a lot lately. When I was a child, I had a very serious lung infection and spent most of 1.5 years in the hospital. My lungs were full of scar tissue, and the concern was, as I grew up, scar tissue doesn't expand, grow. So the doctors were concerned of bleeding, tearing of the scar, and healthy tissue or what? Mom took me to a church my family went to. The pastor did hands-on healing, and we ended up attending in the early 1960s for 3 years. It was Jim Jones' church when he was still in Indiana. It was a lovely church, and I loved Jim. I got 2 hands-on healing from him and a bit of paranormal intervention. The next follow-up with the doctors and my scar tissue disappeared. Every bit of it. They were so concerned I was sent to the hospital and determined a miraculous healing. Jim moved to California, and we went our own way. Years later, the Jonestown event hit. I'd never in a million years suspect Jim doing such a thing. I don't know what happened since we saw him. What is interesting to me is that now I'm 71 years old and still working as a hospice RN. It's who I became, who I unfolded to be, and I love supporting the patients and their families. I wonder, my feeling sort of is that maybe in some odd, offbeat, universal way, I'm still around because of a healing from Jim. Maybe, who knows. I became a hospice nurse in 1990 and still serving that population now. Is there some spiritual connection from getting a second chance at life as a child and somehow making amends for what happened at Jonestown by serving my hospice patients and their families for the past 35 years? Could it be a possibility there is some spiritual connection? I was healed by Jim Jones, and others were murdered by him, and I'm still alive and caring for dying patients as a hospice RN? Those people died in horror, pain, fear, and my patients die peaceful, clean, pain-managed, often at home or in a nice inpatient unit. Am I in some way completing a cycle that, on the periphery, I distantly participated in by being healed by Jim? I feel I am involved in resolving what happened in Jonestown in some spiritual way. finishing up healing the incomplete to the complete of what Jim started out his life as a pastor to be. It's a feeling somehow I'm the last one out the door and the one to turn the lights out before I leave. Is there a reason I'm still loving being a hospice nurse related to Jim Jones?
My name is Daryl, and this is a story that took place in December of 2005. I worked the night shift at a hotel in Myrtle Beach. Summers there weren't so bad. We mainly dealt with families and golfers. The wintertime was another story entirely. The winter meant times were hard for a motel to make money. To combat this, the motels would have super low weekly and monthly rates. The idea was to attract snowbirds, which is what we called older people from up north who would come down and enjoy the quiet, slow off season. The downside of this was that it attracted an undesirable local element as well. These locals would often be drug addicts and criminals. We would have deal with meth labs, domestic violence, thieves, and more. This element was at the root of one of the scariest experiences of my life. The night shift started off as usual. I came in, counted the drawer, and the person working second left. About 10 minutes later, my good friend and fellow employee, Andrew, stopped by. Andrew was a maintenance man who worked second shift at all three of the hotels owned by the company we worked for. This was our usual schedule. Andrew would come by and go grab us food. He would then hang out for a bit to keep me company because third shift was never busy this time of year. I went to the back office to grab money out of my wallet to give to Andrew to pay for my food. While I was back there, the door chime went off, indicating someone had entered. As I came back into the front office, I saw Andrew fall down right in front of me. I looked up just in time to see a fist with a steel pipe coming toward my face. It connected with my jaw, and I fell to one knee, blood filling my mouth. I then felt the pipe make contact with my head. I thought I heard say something about Andrew getting away. The next thing I know, the guy who hit me with the pipe turns and runs away out the door, followed by his friend who I had not noticed before. I staggered to my feet and went to grab the office phone to call 911. As I was using the phone, blood starts running down my head into my face. I request the police and ambulance only to have Andrew walk in with the police officer as I hung up. It seems that the friend of the man who hit me was supposed to get Andrew while his friend pummeled me, but he had frozen up. Andrew was able to flag down a passing police officer and bring help. It is a lucky thing he did, because if not, I may have been killed. You see, I ended up being rushed to the ER, where I had to get 13 staples in my head and diagnosed with a severe concussion. I didn't even realize how bad the attack had been. When I got out of the hospital, I was shown a video of the attack. I thought the guy punched me and then hit me once with a pipe, but I was wrong. I must have been out on my feet because I didn't remember any of this, but I kept trying to stand up and grab the pipe. The guy had alternated between punching me in the head and hitting me with the pipe like 10 times in all. I had terrible PTSD from this experience, but I still went back to work at the hotel on night shift after this happened. I was always nervous after that and was glad when I got a safer daytime job. They never did find the guys who did it.
I encountered a man dressed like a clown when I was walking in the woods. This happened like 3 weeks ago, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. So I go on walks every evening around 9, just in the forest near my house. It's super close and nothing weird ever really happens there. I always take the same route, which goes along this bike path toward a bridge, so I had my headphones in, just walking like usual, when I see 2 people on horses coming my way. Not weird by itself. There's a riding school nearby, but they looked at me kind of strange. Not like mean or anything, just like they were trying to warn me? Hard to explain, but I ignored it. A few minutes later, this boy on a bike passes me. Then I see him meet some guy further down the path, and he just suddenly turns around and bikes away. Again, I didn't really think anything of it. Maybe he was just doing laps or something. But then I get close enough to see the guy, and I swear I've never seen something so weird in real life. He looked like he was around 30 or so, and he was wearing this full-on clown outfit. Not a full costume exactly, but super bright green and orange clothes, a wig, these big goofy glasses, and the weirdest part, he was wearing wooden clogs. Actual clogs, so you could hear him from far away because of the sound on the pavement. I genuinely thought people were pulling a prank on random hikers or something, but the man didn't interact with me in any way. Plus, it was also getting dark, so there was barely anyone in the forest. He didn't look at me or say anything, just stared straight ahead like he was totally out of it. I think he could have been on drugs, but I don't know for sure. I passed him and acted like it was normal, but I was honestly kind of scared he'd turn around or do something. The only thing that made me feel okay was hearing the clogs, because I could tell he was still walking away. But then the clogs stopped a minute later or so, and I turned around, he was gone, like completely gone. I don't even know where he could have gone that fast. There's trees and stuff, but it's not like there's a place to hide right there. I still walk that same route every night, but I've never seen him again.